Welcome to the introductory class on anthropology for IAS mains. Just before we begin trying to achieve in the classes and what is in the offering for you in the subsequent classes. So first of all, where does the optional sit in the overall scheme of the examination? As you know, recently the pattern for UPSC Civil Services examination has been changed. So it now has more emphasis on general studies. So there are 4 general studies papers apart from 1 essay and optional papers each. So though there is more emphasis on general studies right now, optional subjects do still hold very high emphasis. It's about 500 marks. And what is the benefit of optional subjects? So typically what will happen is on the general studies, it's like a common ground for everyone because the areas that are covered in the paper can be varied. So it's totally almost an equal playing ground. Optionals give you that edge because a good choice of subject guarantees you a score that is closer to or beyond cutoff marks for mains, because the variability among subjects also is very high. For example, something like an anthropology or for that matter Malayalam literature till recently has had a very high conversion rate. You can go check on the UPSC's annual report. You will see the conversion rate has been much higher compared to other subjects. So that's the difference it can make. But just remember, it carries 500 marks. So optional subjects you have to give focus on. Now, typically, even among the optional subjects, decision on which subject to choose is very critical. The typical criteria applied for choosing the optional subjects is, first of all, interest in the subject. How interesting does it look to you? The availability of material and good books, right? As in how easily it's available in the market. Is there material very relevant for UPSC per se? Some subjects might have so many books available, but they may not be tailored for the UPSC exam per se. Then availability of guidance in terms of some seniors who have already done this the subject, or coaching institutes, etc. Right? That is also one of the concerns. Though availability of guidance now is becoming less relevant, given that we have so many online resources. That's where we also are trying. We are also fitting in. And then performance of the optional in last few years. What has been the conversion rate? How many? And also the concern on scaling. You know that you have to know that between the subjects also, what UPSC does is some bit of scaling of your scores. For example, or if one of the optional subjects everybody is scoring very high marks, what UPSC would try to do is to reduce the marks of those subjects by, let's say, 5% to 10%, just to give a playing field for all the optionals. So now, how does anthropology fit into this? So interest in the subject, I'm sure with your backgrounds, it's definitely of interest to going to be of interest to you guys. But generally, also, if you go through the syllabus of anthropology that UPSC has given, first of all, it looks like somebody who's not really into the subject has typed in that syllabus, because the order, etc., that it follows, it doesn't seem to be tying in all, and at times it looks scary. However, the subject content is very interesting, and with your backgrounds, I'm sure you'll definitely find it interesting. The books and other material is easily available for this subject in the market. The good part, another good part why anthropology becomes a good optional is there is less research, though it's not good for the subject per se, but from the UPSC examination perspective, there's less research on the subject, and hence the study material, etc., hasn't changed much in last 10 to 15 years, let's say, right? So the set of topics covered, the variability of the material is minimal, and if to say per se, there are about 150-200 questions. If you prepare those properly, it's those questions which keep repeating in one form or the other. Though UPSC is now trying to be much more current affairs oriented, even in optionals, if you see the recent papers of last 2 years, but still the theoretical background to it remains stable. That's where the availability of materials and good books is very relevant for this subject also. In terms of the guidance, don't worry, that's where we are fitting in. So any of your doubts, any of the guidance for the subject, we will cover it. So let's work on this together. And in terms of performance of optionals, I told you right on the first slide itself, you can go and check it on the annual report of UPSC. The conversion rate has been very good for anthropology. Also, now with the changed pattern, given that you have to select only one optional. So most of the students, what they are doing is they are selecting optionals like public administration or geography, which has a lot in common with general studies. So that's one of the arguments in favor of those subjects. But what it does is it reduces the competition for anthropology per se. So that way it becomes one of the niche subjects. So it fits most of those criteria. So now I'm sure you guys have made that choice, keeping most of these criteria in mind. Let's move on. And by the way, guys, in between, if you have any doubts, you can keep typing in the chat window. We can cover them. Yeah, Prem, I'm waiting for your query. Okay. So now, why is anthropology scoring? First of all, the syllabus is relatively short, right? Relatively short is only relatively because, as you know, for UPSC you have to study a lot. Further, what we will do is we will make it concise for you so that we are able to cover it in 2 to 3 months. Right? That's going to be the time frame in which we will try to cover this subject. Obviously, we'll pace it slower or faster depending on your pace and our mutual convenience. Then use of diagrams especially for physical anthropology, it fetches more marks. That's a given fact. So doesn't go on to say that you should have excellent drawing. If you have, that's definitely an added advantage. But the good part is the tough diagrams or the diagrams where you need practice are mostly in the physical anthropology part, which is to do mostly with and the diagrams also will have to do mostly with human anatomy, etc. So that can come with practice. We'll give you some of the diagrams, and during the sessions we'll tell also to you which ones do you need to practice, but definitely keep your focus on the diagrams because it fetches you more marks than writing whole pages and pages of the theory. And the same also applies in terms of flow charts. Right? Flow charts are very effective in this subject. They save time in explaining big concepts. So even in topics like family, marriage, etc., we are going to use some of the flowchart kind of things. So that will come definitely when we get into the session. And some of the topics from the tribal affairs are very useful in general studies papers and essays. Right? So typical pattern of UPSC is socially relevant issues. So socially relevant issues in India, caste, tribal affairs, right, welfare of minorities, etc. So we cover all of those in paper 2. So that's definitely going to be useful for you even in general studies. So that's what is in favor of anthropology.